Hello and welcome to the next season of ARCHLine.XP webinar series. My name is Zoltán Tóth. Over here is our resident architect and ARCHLine.XP guru, Mr. Illich.
Hi there.
So we decided that the first show of this series is going to be all about the tools that ARCHLine has in order to make CAD work easier and more efficient. That's why we gave this title of the webinar, Tools for Effective and Beautiful Design, because we're not going to look at exact tools, but we are going to look at those tools which make your work a bit more convenient.
Yeah.
In a couple of words about what we are going to talk about today, first we'll look at those tools, like I mentioned, which are in the software, but we are going to show you how to use them to take the best out of CAD work. And after that, Illich is going to take over to show some design-specific things, such as tiling schedules, new tiling layouts,
Decals.
and render
also
styles.
about a few modifications that you can use to create several versions of your same design, should it be either exterior or an interior design. But we will talk about that
That's
later.
right. As always, I urge you to ask your questions on the right-hand side where you have a chat bar. If you're not able to access it, maybe you have to refresh the page or you have to log in to access that. But this is where you can ask your questions, and we are going to look at them during the show or at the end if there's no time otherwise. Now, let's first talk about the tools that we have in the software which will make work more efficient. Something that always comes up is how to relocate one part of your project to another project. And that's something that we are solving with the tool called multiple instances of ARCHLine.XP running. Let's see how that works. Let's imagine that I have this stage of this project. Can you tell us a couple of words what this project is about? Because I understand that it's an exact...
This is actually a series of buildings next to each other. They are located someplace in Italy. As I recall, this is an example building coming with ARCHLine that you can just go there and find and just click on this sample project, and you can also try for yourself.
Oh, so that's built in.
Yeah. So you can test many of the features coming shipped with the software, just as the design phases, teamwork, and things like that. And many of those that we will represent today, we will work on this same project. So, would you like to test these things for yourself? Just do it. Download this project, and you can do that with the 2019
That's right.
version.
So imagine this. At another stage of this project, I have a couple of garden furniture, chairs and grills and other stuff here. But I want to get those elements in this state of the project as well. One easy way to do it is that you can run ARCHLine in separate windows. So I have two copies of ARCHLine running. So this is a later stage.
How did you start the second copy? I didn't see that.
You just have to start ARCHLine again.
There's no command to do
No,
that. You just
no.
double click on the application and you start.
Yes,
Okay.
you can start it as many times as you want, but you have to be cautious about this. This is a CAD software, so running it 2, 3, or 4 times might have a heavy toll on your CPU. That's not something that you have to do all the time, so that's not the tool for simultaneous planning. But this is a good way to get data from one stage to the other. So, like I said, I want to have this garden furniture here. So what I have to do, I click on one window.
Perhaps on the other level.
Yes, that's actually the upper level. So I'm just going to navigate to the bottom floor, and I want to have it here. So here's what I do. I go to one project where ARCHLine is running. I have to highlight the content, and here's a very tricky thing. I have to pick an origin point, and it's very good to pick a point which is also available in the other project. So make sure you pick a common point, which in this case is going to be this corner. So I click here.
Or perhaps you can go with the origin if there's nothing else.
Oh yes, definitely. And then I just go to the other instance of ARCHLine, zoom in a bit, and just Control V, and I paste the element over there. So let me just go to the 3D to see what's going on. Here we go. So that's one way to copy elements. Don't forget that this is not for grabbing older items from older versions of ARCHLine, because we have separate tools for that. But if you have multiple projects and you want to get things combed together, then that's the way to do it.
This is quite intuitive, and just a few words to add here. I think it's quite common. I know from feedbacks that this is a very common situation. But for my design, when I work with ARCHLine, it sometimes happens that I have an archived version of a different project, a totally different project, but I know there is a specific part which would work with the current project. That's also something that this works for. You just start one ARCHLine, open it like you would open a document in Word, and you open the other project in the other ARCHLine and just copy paste content. And this translates everything. It turns all the materials, fabrics, geometry, and everything from one
and
project
layers
to the other.
as
and the
well.
layers, yes.
Layers import as well, and if you have any other things attached to it, such as beam parameters, then they import too. That this is very important. Now, here's another thing that would make. So let's imagine that we made several copies of this project. I have several versions of this design, and I want to keep track of my phases, or not phases, but the versions. Here's one thing which is integrated to the welcome screen of ARCHLine. I'm just going to now terminate this to be able to show that.
Yeah, okay, so, but we still have the other copy
yes.
running.
Yes, so if I have the welcome screen, I have these icons which show us what kind of projects I have on my hard drive. But if I go to the list view, I'm able to not only see all the projects that I have ever opened in this version, but I can see the previews, and more importantly, I can filter for the names. So if I want to know the Elata project, what I'm actually working on, I see that I currently have 2 copies. I see the dates, and I can, if I would have more phases, I can order them by date. So that's a very good way.
I can see that you can also order them by size, path,
that's right.
and name.
And also the preview helps a lot, because that way I see what the status is. So that way you're never going to be in the situation where you start working on something which you already surpassed.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a very important way of keeping track of your projects. Now, we promised to talk about the tools that make actual CAD work easier. Here's one of them. I'm just going to go back to this version. By the way, I changed the user interface to be able to differentiate the 2 instances of ARCHLine. I'm just going to change it back, if you don't mind, to something that is more familiar to me.
I think that's a gray one.
Yes. Here's the thing. Ever so often, you are using tools that you are not really using that often. So you know how to make walls and roofs and stuff, but sometimes you're using tools that you don't use that frequently to be able to know what to do exactly.
Terrains or
That's right.
Like that.
Now, we do have an integrated help panel. So up here, if you hover the mouse, you know that the tooltips comes up, but you're also able to pin these out. So if you, for instance, want to work on a wall, let me just pin this out. This is the help tab. If I want to, for instance, draw a wall, and I just click on it, I see that the tooltips, actually the integrated help appears, and that helps me guide through the process. And especially
I can see there's a big difference here, because when I can see this continuously, I can actually follow if it contains more than three steps. I have a very bad memory. And then you can, if you just hover over your mouse over a command, you can see only until the mouse cursor is over the command.
So this guides you through. Obviously, this is not something that you have to have it pinned, so that's the reason why we can sort of unpin it. But if you have tools such as the automated route with profile, or you have a bunch of steps, so you might not be able to know exactly what to do after what, and that's the reason why we have these pinned.
You can also make this larger, right, on the right hand side.
You can
change the size.
Yes, you can, but if you already know,
if you have a wider monitor or something like
if
that.
you already know what you're doing, then you can just disable that. Now, here's another scenario. You want to use a tool, or let me rephrase this. Let's say that you are switching to ARCHLine from another system, and you already have some customs, some hotkeys, and keyboard combinations that you want to import somehow. I mean, I'm not talking about Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, because that's sort of an industry standard or standard for everything. But if you have a special tool in some software that you want to use the same way in ARCHLine, there's a tool for that. At least there's a tool to make shortcuts. Let's say what would be the tool that will be used quite frequently? The layer walk, maybe. For those of you who haven't seen it, the layer walk is able to enable and disable certain elements that you want to work on. So if you want to,
I use this a lot.
If you want to just switch between the layers very easily, then that's the way to do it.
When you make combinations of different
I'm just going
parts,
to enable back the whole thing. So let's say you want to have this layer walk to be available at a very conveniently reachable status. Let's say Control, Shift, and W. That's something I can do it with one hand.
And that's very easy to.
Now, for every single tool up here in the ribbon bar, you just have to right-click and just click on the keyboard shortcut tab, which would bring up this dialog here. This has several purposes. First of all, you can see if the Ctrl-Shift-W combination is already taken. I just have to push down the buttons on my keyboard, and now it tells me that there's actually currently nothing on this, so I can. This is actually free. Otherwise, you can see that W itself has several things attached to it, but this combination is currently free. So what I'm going to do,
so all the orange ones, those are the ones already taken by a command.
Yes.
And what happens if something is like, for example, if you hover over your mouse to the E. That's okay. So that's telling
yes.
me it's Control E, which is for
export. For export. Yes. So it tells you if you just click on it, it tells you what is the current command that is occupying this space. But I'm just going to unlink this, and here's the tool I'm interested in. This is actually on the left-hand side, our ribbon bar. That's our menu, so you can search for the commands that you want to.
Okay, so if otherwise I would like to find, I can see that it's in Edit, in Layer Walk, so I can find it in ribbon bar, Edit, and I can also find it the same place.
There we go. I just have to click somewhere else. Or maybe I can just click on it again. Maybe it's faster.
This is very useful. You don't have to
so just
figure out where this is exactly. Just right away.
Use whichever is more convenient. It's if you are, because I like to use the mouse, but you know sometimes you're working two-handed. I mean you use a lot of key combinations, so maybe this would be something that you would love. So you just highlight what you want to edit like this, and you just push down the keys one after the other by holding them. Keep holding them. Control, Shift, and W would be the Control, Shift, and W would be the one I'm interested in. And now the combination is there. Here's a very important idea. Let me just. Here you go.
Now we can see.
So now I can see that if I push down Control, Shift, and W, it's going to be there. Here's another idea. A lot of our users are using ARCHLine on one computer, but shared by several colleagues, and they all have different expectations and different experiences. So they might want to use different combinations. For that, we are able to make profiles. For instance, this is yours.
There's my profile.
There's your profile, so you can save customized profiles in addition to the factory preset, and that way you can differentiate how you want to handle things. Maybe you want to have the layer walk in another
and also
fashion.
if you are someone who works regularly with in multiple environments. For example, you have an ARCHLine license, you work with another design system and another design system, and you get used to those specific combinations that you use in the other system. Then you can define those, and you can save them, just as you can find several shortcut layouts saved here as a default layout. So should you work in other ecosystems of design systems, you can define most of the commands that are actually common between the two systems. So if we have the same command, you can create the same shortcut that you used to use in the other system, which makes life a lot easier.
Yes, especially if multiple people are sharing the same computer. Just try to avoid misunderstandings. Now, here's when we return back to the actual design. I'm not going to say this. I don't want to override my profile. I'm just going to unlink this so I can see better what I have to do, and I'm just going to enable the 3D window. I'm disabling the plot layout if you don't mind.
We'll use it next time.
This is very intuitive. You just customize what you want to see. Okay, so here's the scenario. We are going to look at the inside of this building, and we are going to do some tiling and some modifications. And you know that you're able to modify the perspectives from this window. We already know that. But here's the thing. How do you manually fine-tune the perspectives? There's a tool for that. And
classically, I would do with the perspective definition.
Obviously, you can do that, but let's say that you just want to fine-tune it a little bit. Or another scenario, maybe you want to show your clients around to show them that. Obviously, there are navigational tools, so you could do this, and you could do the shift and the mouse wheel combination to look around, but that's not that easy. Especially
and the other one, I don't know how many of you.
Oh, that was the right click.
If you just keep holding the right mouse button, you can look around. So that's different from Orbit. That's a look around tool.
Yes, that's right. Now let's see how we can control the perspective from the floor plan. There's this little node here, and this guy has two nodes. One is where we actually are, and the triangle is where we look. And the best thing about this is that it's sensitive to the floor that you're currently occupying, because if I look here, I see that I'm currently occupying the
ground floor.
That's the ground floor, but I can just toggle. So if I want to go to the upper floor, I do that.
Page up, page down.
That's right, with the page up, page down. So let's say I want to go inside, and my perspective is not on the ground floor, but it doesn't matter, because if I grab this and I start to move it, it's going to, if it's not moving, then I'm just going to do it like that. So I can just grab it. So there are two nodes. Now it does. It just had to refresh. It has two nodes. One is where I actually am. The other is where I look. So if I grab it and I turn it, I can move and turn at the same time.
So you can look around.
Yes, which means that I can just keep on dragging it and turning it at the same time.
It's kind of a fixed eye level look around. So you do not look as free as you would do with the right mouse button, but it's also convenient to see what will be the direction of where we look at, but it's easier to find the best perspective.
Don't forget that this doesn't override the regular 3D navigation, so I can again use the right click, and I can use the mouse wheel, hold it down, and elevate it if I want. But notice that whatever I do, this node follows that.
Yeah.
Let's say I want to do something on the upper floor. I'm just going to put push the page down to move one floor up. And if I grab this node again, I move to the upper floor. So that's simple as that. This is very good for demonstrational purposes. So if you want to show your clients around, you can do that. Yeah. For instance, later on, you are going to apply some nice tiling here. Yeah. And that's one way to handle that. Now, here's another idea. You want to fine-tune and move elements on your floor plan. Let me just move so I can see this array of tables and chairs better. I want to quickly move these elements. I can obviously click on them and use the move nodes, but let's say I just want to sort of push them in or pull them out a bit.
Kind of trying to figure out what's the best position.
Yes, right? Nudging them actually would be the correct term. So if I now use the keyboard arrows, then I can.
Now you just push.
Yes, I'm just pushing down the keyboard arrows, and I can move the elements with a set of incrementations.
Yes, what's the step? I can see that it's around, I don't know.
I'll show you in a minute. I just want to show that there are actually two sets. One is the regular, like just pushing the arrow buttons, but if I hold down Shift and push the arrow buttons, then the scale would be a little bit smaller. Now let me show you how you can set this up. This is actually working not only for 3D elements but also for lines. So if you are
so whatever I select, I can.
Yes. Yeah. So if you are coming from a 2D drafting background, then that's the way you can nudge elements with an incrementation, which I'm going to show you now how to set up. So if you go to the settings and go to Snap and Grid, here you can set up the incrementation for the larger steps, which if you just push the arrow keys, that would be 500 millimeters, so half a meter. Or fine incrementation, which is if you push down the Shift and the arrow keys. So that's.
So if I would like to fine tune it, I just come here.
Yes, you just override it.
I just would like to use I don't know 100 millimeters for the other one. I just change it, close it, and then it's
yes.
updated.
So if I select it again, and I can just.
Push the Shift
and this was just 100 millimeters. So that's one way to nudge elements. So you don't have to go back and forth between through 3D and 2D. Just highlights what you want to move, and then just push the buttons. Again, we are trying to implement more things to enable two-handed work. One hand on the mouse, the other is on the keyboard. And I think this is where you actually come in, because I told a lot about tiling. So now comes your part when you actually show us something beautiful as opposed to just nudging things around. So
well, so this project where we work at, it's already at least this building part where we are now in the first building of this series of buildings. Is as you can see, it contains a lot of details already. It has a nice floor, it has some furniture inside. We will actually, in the following webinar, we will also think about and work with different project phases and different project versions of this same project. So we will show you the tools how to work in a kind of larger scale, or how to go deeper in the project design. And what I'm about to show you now is a few things that allows you to detail the content. Now I will focus on the interior, but obviously you can use these tools in the exterior. And then I will talk about the different kind of color versions or material versions of this building. That will be an exterior example.
Let's see.
So now here, you mentioned that I will talk about the tiling patterns. Tiling is a very powerful tool in ARCHLine. It was always a very powerful tool. I used to say that it's having the complexity that it alone could be a different design system on itself, but it's integrated into the software, and it allows you to select the surface or multiple surfaces and decorate them either with a nice texture or with real 3D tiles. That means the software will actually know how many pieces of tiles you used on the surfaces, and then at the end, which I will show you at the end of this demonstration, you can even create a decoration or tiling list which details how many pieces you used on the surface.
So it's not just going to be a texture, but it's an intelligent texture which tells you exactly how many tiles of what kind of size you have.
It's far more than a texture. It's actually the tile itself. The ARCHLine is actually being able to let me show you the tool. So
yes, just
then I can show you how that exactly works. Now, I think that's pinned there, and then I just would like to change the let's just pin this there because I will use this a lot.
Yes.
And then change its size, and then just organize it. There's a trick which I used to use also for my work, but for these presentations we also use. You can change the balance between the left and right hand side, which is I don't know how many of you know this, but I think it's also a very useful tool when you work on a computer. You can use the full screen mode. This is kind of obvious. You can just enlarge it and you can shrink it. You can even use the F2 key for that. So before I go on, I just would like to change the balance because I would like to see the bigger 2D on the right hand side and a little bit smaller 3D. So I just go here, and there is this the set active view size in percentage, and percentage is always from here to here. That's 100% here. So when I say that this shouldn't be 75, but instead of that,
you want to have 50-50.
I don't know. Let's use 50-50, or I like to highlight slightly that which is the one that I'm working. It should be a little bit larger. So that's 60%. That means now this is 60. It's also highlighted just as it was before. And then the rest, because there could be many other drawings here, the rest is sharing this area. So this is how you can change the balance between the drawings. Okay, this was kind of off topic, but I think
yes, but that ties to our topic actually. This wasn't in our agenda.
Yeah, but the one thing that I'm about to show you is how to decorate surfaces with tiling, and I also have a few images for this. Let me just quickly try to find that view that I used to use, and I believe it's around here. Let's just go back
yes,
there.
that's Ilish is now navigating through the saved perspectives. You can use the up and down buttons or the page up, page down keys.
Yeah. So up and down here, and the page up, page down keys. So now here I have this view, and I will decorate this, the bottom floor surface. I will change this texture to a real tiling, and for that I will use the interior, and there's the built-in tiling tool with all the tools that you can use here. Now I'm about to decorate a surface in 2D. I think it's worth talking about that you can either decorate in 3D, but for those of you, I sometimes also find difficult to find a surface because simply my design is complex. So you can use the same tools in 2D. So whichever is most perfect for your actual current design process, you can use the 2D or 3D tool. Now I'm about to use the 3D because it's easier to select this surface here. So I'm using the tiling in 3D, and then I select one of the surfaces, like for example the floor, and then the software brings up this styling properties panel. By default, I can see a rectangular shape. Now this rectangular shape, that's the factory default. It's actually here. You can design the shape of it, I mean the size, the width, and the height. It actually depends on what sort of measurement system you use. You can work in feet and inches, millimeters, centimeters, meters. This really depends on the settings of the software. So then you can set up the material, how this surface will look like, and then the rest will be just distributed on the surface based on this setting. That's a miniature here, and that's how it will be distributed. So if you try to figure out what else we have here, we have built-in patterns. We have a kind of rectangular mosaic tiling. This is also very interesting too. We have a tutorial about this.
Yes, we covered it.
And it's giving you brilliant results. So you should try that. Also, there is this user profile. There is this. You can even tile with objects. Again. Talking about objects, those could be really, really complex. So you should use objects for tiling only if it's necessary. For example, you tile surfaces like a panel like this behind us. But other than that, the regular tiling patterns and the rectangle will just do fine. So I will go with the built-in patterns. The built-in patterns is the one that could give you those interesting results that you can see here when you browse through these. There's this herringbone, hexagon, four square finger and four square finger pocket, second layout. Those are these here with the little rectangles and the larger ones combined together. There's another interesting hexagonal. I think this is quite popular nowadays. There is another one.
So you're saying that these come with the software?
Yes, these are built in. I did not download them. These are not textures. They are logics.
Oh, so like distribution rules.
So they are distribution rules that tells the software that whenever I select any of these, let's start with, for example, this this one, this 3 parts hexagon, because when I start with that, I can see this tiny thumbnail which represents the 3 tiles of that specific combination of 3 materials. And then I can see a little example how it will be distributed. Now, whenever I change the shape of this whole layout, let's just make it kind of regular shape, like 400 millimeters by 400 millimeters. That's the bounding box of this whole thing. So let's just go here, 400 by 400. It's nice, symmetrical, and perfect. So this is how it looks like. So now here, the rest is the same, just as for the other tiling. You can set up the thickness and of course the grout. And this is an important thing here, because if I wouldn't be able to set up a complex tiling like this based on a logic, based on a rule, then I couldn't change the grout.
Yes,
because that would be a texture, and it would be terrific. If it would be not useful when I would like to design something with a wide and very much visible, I don't know, dark tone grout. But if also, in the other hand, if I would like to just remove that, I just would like to completely skip it, and now I can do that because this is a parametric part of that. Let me just quickly demonstrate that. I change it to 10 millimeters. See, now the grout is very much visible. And then I change this back to, I don't know, 2 millimeters, how it was. Then it's a different layout. So I select this. I set up the materials. I think for this one, I will go with a different one, and I go to...
so you assemble them like you do in the mosaic tiling.
So let's go to tiling, and let's find something in indoor. And what is the setting? It's kind of an eggshell and the dark tone one. So let's go with for example, this one. Okay, so that's it. The 3 different combinations, and this is actually and this is actually it's far from the grout setting, but this is the grout material. This is what I will see between the tiles.
Oh, so if the grout will be bigger, then you would see that. So
yeah, that's right. So I go with okay, and then I can set the origin.
Yes.
Let's just align it with this point,
and
the rotation degree or angle. So let's just set up.
It just takes a moment to calculate it.
Well, it depends on how many tiles the software have to figure out how it was cut and everything else, and that's how it looks like. So if you don't like the direction, you can redistribute that, you can erase that, you can do all the same things that you would do otherwise with the tiling. So from that point on, it's just as the same.
So you could even crop the layout. So that was a workshop, that was a webinar on this, how to create tiling styles. So we are not going to show that right now, but there's a way to fine-tune the presets.
Yeah, and sometimes this comes as a question at this point that if I'm able to create a tiling, half sharing one sort of tiling on one part of the room and the other sort of tiling on the other part of the room.
Has
two different areas, yes. And actually this is how we handle it in ARCHLine. Now we won't talk about that because we have a completely different tutorial about that, but it's good to know that ARCHLine works on so-called background areas, tiling areas. So now, because I have selected the whole surface is considered as one tiling area. I can now change it, I can crop it and use the rest of the layout, or I can design 2 separate layouts and then, or 3 or 4, and then tile them differently. So this is absolutely something that you can do just as it appears here.
You mentioned that one advantage of using this method is that you can create schedules and takeoffs.
Yes, and before, let me just quickly show one more thing. So the other thing that I wanted to show is that the rest of the patterns, how they look like, and I also have a selection of these patterns that I already generated. So as you can see, there's this fan option triangles, this benzene, which is also a very how to say, popular, yeah. And so these are the options, and all these work the same way. You set up the logic, the rule, then you set up the size, then you set up the materials, and the software will distribute them for yourself. So talking about the options for this layout that you can see here, I have actually generated a few of those. They are, let me just open up that's here, and this today's webinars folder, and I have this tiling library here with all the views that I have created previously. And it's this one here. Let me just open up. So that was another option for the same interior.
And don't forget that these are not rendered images. This is just a plain screen grab from the 3D.
That's just a snapshot. You know, there's a built-in tool in ARCHLine for the snapshot. You can just easily save them. And that's the first option with one coloring, the second option with another type of coloring. This is the one that I have created, and so on. So with the triangle and another triangle option, and so on. And the same you can do for wall surfaces or ceiling or other areas.
Yeah, so in any areas you can tile. Now let's talk about schedules and takeoffs.
So the schedules, you can find all sort of quantity takeoff scheduling option and commands here in the documentation. Also, if it's about tiling, you won't find it here. You will find it in the documentation. It's here in the quantity takeoff, and the one I'm talking about, it's kind of a command tool that collects all the sort of calculation tools. Which is this one. Here you can select that you are about to set an information file about the building calculation, interior calculations, and they are dedicated ones for example, for the tiling. Now, this is a very easy one. You just select what sort of tiling you collect the information of. Now, in this project, I'm only collecting information of the slab, but in a regular project where I work with all the rest of the surfaces, and I actually have decorations on the other surfaces, I also tick the walls, rooms, and other options. Now I just click on OK, and then let me just save it. Let's just save it here. I think I'm fine with that. The tiling Excel file is fine. Okay. And then if you have Excel installed on your computer, it automatically opens. And there is this this material, the other one. So it's actually a quick tile summary for the selection that I'm about to see the information about. And then there is the areas listing. This is listing. So one is tiling, and the other one is there's the areas that are decorated. Those are not necessarily the same.
What's the difference?
The tiling is actually built from real tiles. This is like from bricks. Just in this case, those are tile patterns or shapes. If you talk about an area could be fully covered by tiling, but it could be also left out, like as a material, as a painted surface. So, if I would like to go with a quick and easy example, tiling is tiling and area is painting. But you can use it more kind of creatively, so you can use it for many other ways. Yes. One is an area, and the other one is with real tiles. So this is how you can collect this information. Also, you can go to the tile details. You can collect information about what sort of tiles and how many pieces. See, there is an example. This is with the same material, but with different size. And why is that? It's because it's cut. So it's not the full tile. Those are a few pieces only. As you can see, the biggest number about this proper material is more than 600. So that's the whole tiles. You can even see their size. These are the original size, but the rest, those are the cut pieces. The software won't tell you. It won't optimize. It will just simply tell you what was the area found there and how it looks like. So you can use this for calculation and kind of quantity takeoffs.
Let's stay at the topic of decoration elements. How about using? We already covered this, using transparent images in the software. But now we have a tool which is able to create decals, like sort of vinyl overlays on which you can stick on the wall, and this could be any kind of shape, right?
Yeah. For example, if you talk about, now we are actually talking about decals, and the decals are specific images that are having no regular cut, rectangular cut boundings. Those are basically, their boundaries are basically based on the content what they have, and this is handled via a very simple what do they call it? It's an image format. The PNG image format is actually one of the formats that is being able to carry alpha channel, the transparency channel. So I actually have a few images saved here. Let me just go to the other library, and it's this one here. I have this This is a nice
grayscale
map
nice touch
of the world.
to the interior. So we want to have this on the wall, but in a way that the color of the wall sees through.
So now, as we look at this image, we would say that okay, there's a gray area and there's a white area, but it's actually not white. This is transparent. So when I use this image on a surface, whatever falls behind this will get the color or material pattern that it already has by default. To kind of better represent this, I think I will just quickly change the color of this specific surface.
Yeah, so we can see the difference.
So I think I will go with the materials built in the project, and I just select a different tone. I think, well, let's just go with this one. I think something gray will work well on the surface. It's too large, but it's a dark tone kind of painted surface.
So it's reflective, so we can see the oven from the other side.
Yeah. I think I just change it to something matte. Yeah, this is a bit better. So here, I would like to apply a decal. So this is something that we should bring in as a material. I already did that. That's an example here. I show you how to bring in a texture like that. So you just open it on your screen. It's actually off screen now. Let me just bring it here. So I just, there's the file manager, and from the file manager you can click and drag and drop over this ARCHLine surface. And when that happens, ARCHLine recognizes that was an image. It has an alpha channel, which we can clearly see here. That was a
transparent image. Yeah, it has areas which are transparent.
Yeah. So it brings this in. It automatically turns it into a material with some sort of settings that I can change. For example, I don't want to have refraction here, so let's just dial that down and use a value of 1. So you just change these values, and whenever you change any of those, this is how this material will be actually generated. Don't worry if something like this happens. This is normal. This is what you should see on screen. So now I'm happy with the settings. I'm actually saving it, okay? And then now I have this image, and I have the previous one. So whichever I click and drag on the surface, it would be used as a material. To be able to use it as a decal on top of the original surface, I should use the interior, and there is a single object, and there is this picture on wall tool. The picture on wall comes with the default setting, whichever I used this previously. So it comes with the default setting, which I can go with a ship or something else. This really depends on the settings that you work.
It just creates a basic item from which you can.
Now that's just a regular poster or painting or whichever object you use or image you used before, material you used before. So if I go to the settings of this one and go to the properties, I can find that this actually has no framing. I'm fine with that. It has matting.
We don't
this
need
one.
that,
I don't need that for the decal. So I don't need anything. I just need to change the image parameters. This ship material should be changed to the one that I have just created before. This one, okay. Well, actually, this was the previous one, but anyway, this is the same material. So I go with the I should. When this question comes up, this means that either I would like to keep these values stored with the other image previously selected, or I should read the size of the material that I have actually created.
Which one would you choose right now?
I will go with this one. So I would like to use the built-in values of that material that I'm about to select, and that comes with this value. If I'm fine with that, I go with this. If I would like to change that, I usually lock the two values with this one, and then I change it. Let me just fine-tune it to 1,500. So the other one is also
ratio
changing.
is maintained. Yeah. Okay, so if we hit OK, then it's going to turn into this map.
So now it's actually, as you can see, it's nicely overlapping the other areas as well, and it literally works as a decal, because it's not having this area filled with anything. You can still use it. You can still manipulate it, change it, translate it, resize it. You can also make several copies if this is a pattern that repeats itself over some place. So if this is a decal, if this is not something that you would create with decoration or tiling, this is how you would do that with the decal option.
You already talked about materials, but let's talk about what happens if you want to change, instead of just changing one material to the other, maybe you want to change a whole set textures or something else.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the tool for that?
Okay, we have a tool. It's called the design alternatives with the color cards. Color cards are the tools giving me the power to be able to build up a set of materials, actually a list of materials, locked to a material set, a materials setting, and then being able to quickly switch between those allows me to quickly represent different design alternatives for even in front of the client or just for myself for testing purposes. Now, this is how it goes. Let me just go outside of this building, because this has a nice gray and white tone outside. I like that, but let's see.
You want to show an
would like to
alternative?
test a few alternatives, whether this is the best or something else. So I actually would like to test this area with different kind of materials. Now, you would say it's very easy to do anyways in ARCHLine by just simply going to the model and, I don't know, selecting something else. Let's just go with, for example, a wooden material and just drop it over and say, okay, replace this material on this project, this object, or everywhere else. Which works fine, but it's tedious. You have to always select the one that you are about to change it, so you cannot build up a set. So if you would like to do that, you have to go the other way around. You need to click on the surface, find this material, so the surfer gives you the properties. This is actually how you can fine-tune it for rendering and everything else. And then in this local menu, you can find this option called Convert to Color Cards. Now, if I do that, I would like to do that, then a list comes up, which is only now built of one item, one element, but here I can open up the material library,
and that's further,
and then
right?
I can find, let's just go with this one. This is interesting. And let's just go with the other one. I think there at the bottom there's let's go with this one. This is also an interesting one. So I'm just actually browsing through and try to find either colors or detailed patterns, materials. Let's just go with brick. I think this would be also interesting. And let's just go with, I don't know, what would it look like if the whole thing is bright white? Okay, so these are my options. So when I just created that, nothing changed in the project yet. It just actually remembers that this here
has a few alternatives.
Yeah, it's actually not a single material. It's actually a color card, combining a few options that I actually previously saved with that. So if I click here, then this selection list comes up. And now let's just move this to the side and let's just click here. Let's see what happens. If I click on this second option, see now the software is working. It's actually going through the whole project, and it is trying to. It actually did. It changed. There's not a big difference between the tone.
Change maybe.
But it changed the material. Let's just go with this one, with the cladding, and see how that works with this project. If I wait a little bit, the software goes around and changes that. If I'm still not happy with that, I just go with the other one and the other one and the other one. So this is how just waiting a little bit gives me one or two or three or four other options. I can also make a quick test render. I can just save a snapshot and send to the clients. So this is already built in and saved with the project. So whenever I don't know, half a year later, when I'm back to this project, I'm starting to work with it. It will keep this this setting for this material is because it's stored with the project.
Perfect. It's a very neat tool. We have another tool which is able to toggle between alternatives, and that applies for renders, right?
Yes. Yeah. Now for rendering, there is a. I think I will demonstrate this in an interior project.
Yes.
Now for rendering, is sometimes it takes a little while to set up the different material settings, because once you, for example, when you download something from the warehouse, those objects are beautiful, sometimes with very detailed texture and so on, but the material settings sometimes they just simply do not contain enough information to be able to render them correctly, because there is no reflection, there is no transparency, there is no physical material property that we could import. So to be able to handle that easily, and all the rest actually, there is something called render styles, and for that, let me just close this, I will load this project. This is you might be familiar with this project if you saw any of our rendering tutorials, because we use this for those. And that what I did here, I just set up this view. And in this view, when I do the quick rendering, let's just go with the rendered option and go with an integrated rendering real time, because I would like to have continuous feedback on what I do. So let's go with start rendering. Yeah. So now a new window will appear with the rendering inside, and I will be able to follow changes whatever I do here in the 3D. So let's just reorganize the content. So we will see this appearing on the right hand side, starting rendering. There's the 2D and there's the 3D.
Yes.
So now what happens? I would like to, as fast as possible, I would like to set up reflections, realistic materials, and everything like that. Now, what I could do, anyways, I just right click here and find the material and go to the settings and change that. That's fine. I can do that whenever I want. But there is a quicker way to do that. There is actually this render styles here. And see what happens if I, for example, click and drag ceiling as a material style. Remember, this is not a material. This is a rendering style for the material. So what happens if I click and drag, for example, this to the ceiling, and I click there? Now the tone of the ceiling won't change. It's changing the material properties. Perhaps the ceiling is a little bit more reflective. Perhaps
yes.
so
these are
details
presets. You can just drag and drop, and then the features, the properties would appear.
Well, this was not that much visible, so let's go to the floor to see it's much better. So what happens if I change the floor to glossy covering? See, it looks like a kind of toy ball here, a glossy toy ball. If I click and drag and click and paste it here, it won't turn red. So this is not the material; it's just the reflection type.
Yes, I get what you're saying. It's not.
It's just
not
the physics.
What's on the image, but the kind of appearance.
Yeah, that's the physics of how it will look like, how it will reflect or not, how it will behave in the 3D environment. So if I do that with the marble, I know there's a wooden pattern, but still you can drag any of those.
So it would have some kind of a
it
soft,
will change how it looks
yes.
like in the 3D. This is kind of more marble-like, even though it has wooden texture. You can actually use parquet. That's also a very good and very nice option. It's a little bit darker on the right-hand side, still reflective, but not that perfectly reflective, and so on and so on. So this is how you can go with that. Let me just quickly change the view so you can see it easier. Also, a few about other type of materials. Let's just work on this here. For example, let's again go with glossy covering here.
Yes. Oh yes,
well,
I see. Okay. I see the result.
That's nice.
Maybe you want to tone it down a bit. So
let's turn them all gloss. How it looks like. So see, easily you can find it. So you won't change the material. You won't select materials and change them all over. You just change their behavior. Let's just go how it looks like in plastic, and how it looks like if it's porcelain, and so on. So this is how you go around and make changes easily.
Perfect.
You can test that. They're pretty. There's water, glass, curtain, fabric, and all those settings that you can see. For example, here on this back wall, this is the last that I'm about to show you now. What happens if I use frosted glass? So there's actually an opening to the background area. So I would like to see through a little bit, but not that clearly. Okay, that's fine, but perhaps that's just a storage. It's not that much pretty, so yes. I just change it to either general or plastic, or there's actually a wall setting here, this one. So you can just, click and drag and make it wall. So it's giving you kind of the wall effect, which is not reflective, but giving you some kind of shininess from a certain angle.
Perfect. Makes it very easy.
Yes.
So to sum up, these are the things that we wanted to talk about at this stage of the. Yeah, you have.
Don't forget what you would like to say. One last word about this, because there is one representation there. As you can see, there are those little rectangles over there, or squares.
What do they mean?
Color codes. Those color codes help me to find if I maintained all the materials that I wanted to maintain. Perhaps I'm not that clear on the rendering, because this is just a sketch rendering. This is not the final. I have to start a final render to figure out whether all the reflections are perfect or not. But to be able to to make this process quicker, I can change this view to color coded. This color code tells me that if I find it, if I click and drag here, this is pocket. I can clearly see that's the same tone here and here.
I see.
So I can easily find what you...
It basically tells you what kind of styles you have currently on your model.
So if I use Chrome here, I can clearly see all those are Chrome, which is visible now in the rendering. But if I wouldn't have rendering, I still would be able to tell that those are Chrome surfaces because I use this color-coded version. And I think one information is meant to talk about, I mean worth talking about, is you should avoid matte in a realistic rendering as much as possible. I'm not talking about the tiny details because, for example, some tiny far-off thing would be pretty and nice with a matte material, but most of the materials will go much better and they will be much more realistic with all the rest of the materials. So your goal when you work with this color-coded click and drag and change is to skip matte materials in sacrifice of rendering time, of course, because when there is less matte material, then rendering time goes up. But your goal is to kind of trying to find the best balance. And when you are finished with that, you can just restore the view, and then you can just even close this back and work with the rest of the software.
Thank you. That's actually what I wanted to talk about at this stage of the first part of our webinar on the tools that make design easier. We are going to have another show next week, which will be all about the solutions for advanced projects. Can you give us a sneak peek of what we are going to talk about?
Well, talking about those advanced projects, we will talk about design phases. That's, I think, a very interesting thing, which allows you to handle different stages of the design and building process. Should you have, an existing stage, when you go on site, you make the survey, and then you make a demolition plan, that's another stage, and then you make the new design stage, that's the third stage. Those are all things that if you would not have this option, the design stage or design phases option in ARCHLine, you would be only able to handle them in separate projects, and that would be a waste of time. So we will show you how to do that. And there's another thing which is kind of connecting to this one, is that you can actually create and maintain layer visibility groups. That's actually a tool being able to help you in building up design versions. I'm not talking about color cards or material versions, but complete different versions of the same interior with a different layout, or the same building with different interior divisions or partition walls and so on. These are things that we will show you as an example in the following webinar next week, and we will talk about a few more, I think, not only these. See you there.
Before that, we have a couple of questions, and I just
just
want to buy some time until I have them all available. So
I can see that you're very busy there.
Yes, there's quite a few questions centered around rendering, and I'm very grateful for those who are explaining things to each other. That's always good to see, because then we don't have to explain these things. But here's a visual aid. So regarding rendering, we did a lot of shows about these. So if you go to the webinar website, the ARCHLine.XP.com/education/webinars, which is actually here. If you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see quite a few shows. We did one webinar on the interior design related rendering, which should be somewhere.
There was another one with the architecture.
That was one with architecture, lighting and visuals, and that was another one. If I go down, is lights and rendering. So these two courses are very good to complete, because they would tell you everything you need to know about ARCHLine.XP rendered related things, how to set up materials, light sources, and how to get the best out of your renders, and what are the tricks you can use. For instance, if you have a small unit or a small room, how you can work in that. It's very, very useful. Another question is, there's a remark about that the software system is very good. The only thing that I don't really like is the way the 3D model look. There's one way to change how the 3D models look like, right?
Yeah, well, the 3D model look is maintained via either this option here on the right hand side with you can set up the defaults. And there is one another thing that not many of the users know, that actually when you are in the 3D or also in the 2D, you can still open up the properties bar
Yes.
The left-hand side, and you can control how the 3D content looks like. This is giving you more control over how it behaves and how it looks like than the presets on the right-hand side. Mm-hmm. So would you like to change any of those settings? You would like to change the tone or make it brighter or darker or something like that? You can do that. You can even maintain the shadow settings and the walk speed, as you can see on the left-hand side. Or if you have another question about that, we are more than happy.
Definitely. If there's anything that we haven't answered here, keep the questions coming as you always do. All the questions and remarks and suggestions about what we should talk about at these webinars are very welcome. So you can send it to our channels. Again, I'd like to thank you for your attention. Be sure to check out the next show next week, which is going to be about more complex projects. Until then, thank you very much for tuning in. Goodbye.
It was a pleasure. Bye.